Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It is Monday, September 22nd, 2025, and on Mondays we talk about mathematics and statistics. But since we're talking about the planets this week, we're going to just briefly cover some descriptive information, some basic stats about the planets, so much of which you probably already know, or at least I think you should know. So that's what we're covering today. So the innermost planet, of course, is Mercury. It's the smallest and the fastest, and again, by definition, the closest planet to the sun, only about 36,000 miles away. And the temperature ranges there are incredible, or as much as 430 degrees Celsius in the day, so wear your sunblock, and minus 180 degrees Celsius at night. So it's going to be hard to decide what to wear if you're going out for the evening on Mercury. And it revolves incredibly slowly on its axis. Each single day on Mercury is the equivalent of about 176 Earth days. Talk about a long day at work. Yeah, that's what happens on Mercury. And then there's Venus, Earth's twin, really known as a twin basically because of its similar size and relative mass. But if it's our twin, it's definitely a fraternal twin, not an identical twin. The reason I say that is it's the hottest planet, for example, in the entire solar system, with a surface temperature of about 464 degrees Celsius due to the greenhouse effect. In other words, its atmosphere consists mainly of carbon dioxide, and it's 90 times thicker than that of the Earth, so it's considered to be kind of the soupy planet. It's also a retrograde planet in terms of its rotational spin. It spins clockwise rather than counterclockwise like most of the other planets. And talk about long days, again, the day on Venus is about 243 Earth days, and that's actually longer than Venus's year, which is 225 days to get around the sun. Oh, and it also, of course, has more volcanoes than any other planet, at least 1,600 or more. Then we come to the third rock from the sun. That is, of course, the Earth. We're the only planet with liquid water on the surface, and that's really good news for our survival and that of the millions of other species that we co-inhabit. So that's remarkable. And indeed, we also, of course, live in an incredibly active planet, one that's constantly changing with plate tectonics, reshaping our surface, creating the mountains, the earthquakes, and changing even the land masses over the millennia. And you're probably aware, or maybe you're not directly aware, or consciously aware, that we're also protected as well by a magnetic field that shields us from the solar winds. And so, yeah, otherwise we'd be dead. Okay, then there's the fourth planet from the sun, Mars, which is the planet thought to be, it's the red planet, it's thought to be the planet most likely to be habitable by humans. That's our goal long term. But it has an extremely thin atmosphere, which means that we'd have to create some kind of an indoor environment to actually survive. Or, people talk about terraforming planets. I think we're quite a long ways away from that. But we could conceivably put some kind of structures on the planet and, bring along the oxygen and so on. We'd also get to still enjoy seasonal changes on Mars because of the tilt of the planet. It's very similar to that of Earth in that sense. And there's also evidence that water may have once flowed freely on Mars. And finally, it has twice as many moons as the Earth does, too. Okay. And at number 5 is, fifth from the sun, is Jupiter, which is more than 5 astronomical units from the sun. If the Earth is 1 astronomical unit from the sun, then the Jupiter's, to say, is about 5.2. It's also by far the largest planet in the solar system. You probably know it's about 1,300 times the size of Earth, meaning you could fit literally 1,300 Earth-sized objects inside of Jupiter. But it's a part of the planet. It's also currently consumed by a raging storm known as the Great Red Spot, which is that area itself is larger than the entire Earth. Now, the space probe Juno, which was launched some time ago, has taken some extraordinary photos of the planet, and the sensors and the instruments have measured all sorts of incredible things on the planet Jupiter that we got entirely wrong from our more distant observations historically. So I'm going to address some of what we've learned about Jupiter and what the science now tells us about Jupiter on Thursday, and how we've had to rewrite the history of the story of Jupiter in large measure, and we're continuing to rewrite that story. It also has at least 95 moons and counting, including Ganymede, the largest in the entire solar system. It's actually, Ganymede's almost half the size of the Earth itself. Oh, and it's also the fastest rotating planet. So its day there, it takes only about 10 hours. So despite its huge size, it's spinning fast as hell. And then sixth is the planet Saturn, which is again almost twice as far as Jupiter is from the sun. It's about 9.5 astronomical units from the sun. So now we're getting really far out in the solar system. And it, by the way, it rotates almost as fast as Jupiter as well. So it's another gas giant, but it rotates at about once every, or a full day there lasts about 10.5 hours. It's also, of course, most famous for its spectacular rings, which are made of ice and various sized rock particles, even huge boulders, some the size almost of mountains. And there are 7 main rings of Jupiter, which Galileo first observed through the telescope in 1610. And of course, many, many more much smaller ones, much less prominent. It's also the only planet with a density that's less than that of water, meaning technically it could float on water. If you could find an ocean large enough, it'd have to be a really huge ocean, though, since that is Saturn's 9 times wider than the Earth, and you could fit about 764 Earths inside of it. It also has the most known moons of any planet, with at least 146, and the largest named Titan. 7th from the sun is Uranus. It's the sideways planet. Yeah, it rotates on its side. The only planet to do that. It has an axial tilt of about 98 degrees. It has the coldest atmosphere of any planet, with temperatures plunging to as low as minus 225 degrees Celsius. It also, like Saturn, it does have rings. It has 13 faint rings, certainly far less than Saturn and much less visible. Once again, we'd have to basically double the distance compared to Saturn to get to Uranus. So it's quite a ways away, and indeed, it lies about 19 astronomical units from the sun, which means that 1 year there, if you're rotating, if you're living there, it's going to take you about 88 Earth years to go once around the sun. It's also, by the way, the first planet discovered by telescope by William Herschel back in 1781. And finally, there's Neptune, a staggering 4.5 billion kilometers from the sun, or about 30 astronomical units out. It's also known as the blue planet, which I'll explain in a moment. It's the windiest planet of all, with gusts reaching a mind-blowing 2,000 plus kilometers per hour. Hard to get insurance for your property there. It's also known as the blue planet because of its primarily methane atmosphere, and methane absorbs red light, and that's what gives us its blue hue. And it has at least 5 faint rings, again composed of mainly dust and ice particles, though. And finally, the honorable mention planet would be Pluto, which used to be a planet, used to be in the club, and it was a planet all of my life, at least up until 2006, when it was reclassified by the International Astronomical Union as a dwarf planet. Kicked out of the club. And the reason that happened is because it didn't meet all of the key criteria for a planet. Most importantly, what it failed to do was it has failed to clear any additional planetary debris that would truly set it apart as a distinctive planet. And it's relatively small. And again, hence the name dwarf planet. No offense to little people, but yes, the dwarf planet. And in fact, we've discovered at least 4 other dwarf planets of similar size: Makemake, Ceres, Haumea, and Eris. And then there are a few others that are nearly the same size. And plus, when you're talking about Pluto, now you're getting so far from the sun. You're talking about upwards of 50 astronomical units, and actually at the edge of the so-called the Kuiper belt, which is filled with icy objects outside of the orbit of Neptune. And the Kuiper belt also contains, by the way, many short-period comets that we occasionally see fly by the Earth as well. Okay, so that's our brief descriptive overview of the planets, but we have much more to say about them from different perspectives for the remainder of the week. Starting tomorrow, of course, when we're going to be looking at planets through the perspective of music and the arts. So a very different vantage point, shall we say. In the meantime, may you and yours, as ever, continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, and dole out hugs in abundance. Cheers.